Global shipping was in chaos even before the Suez blockage. Shortage and higher prices loom. One of the world's most vital trade arteries has been blocked by a quarter-mile long container ship, creating a traffic jam that has ensnared over 200 vessels and could take weeks to clear. But even before the Ever Given ran aground in the Suez Canal earlier this week, global supply chains were being stretched to this limit, making it much more expensive to move goods around the world and causing shortage of everything from exercise bikes to cheese at a time of unprecedented demand. A prolonged closure of the key route between west and east could make matters much worse. Costly delays or diversions to longer routes will heap pressure on businesses that are already facing container shortages, port congestions, and capacity constraints. Grounding of the evil given is delaying shipment of consumer goods from Asia to Europe and North America, and the agriculture products moving in the opposite direction. As of Friday, some 237 vessels, including oil tankers and dozens of container ships, were waiting to transit the canal, which handles about 12% of global trade. There's been a great convergence of constraints in supply chains like I've never seen before, said Bob Biesterfeld, the CEO of C.H. Robinson, one of the world's largest logistics firms. The bottlenecks were widespread, affecting transport by air, ocean, and road. Biestelfeld told CNN Business in an interview, "It really has been unprecedented. The Ever Given turned sideways in Egypt's Suez Canal on Tuesday, blocking traffic in a crucial east-west waterway for global shipping. Freight Freight costs soaring. More than 80% of global trade by volume is moved by sea, and the disruptions are adding billions of dollars to supply chain costs. Globally, the average cost to ship a 40-foot container shot up to $1,040 last June to $4,570 on March 1st, according to S&P Global Flat. Those costs add up. In February, container shipping costs for seaborne U.S. goods imports totaled $5.2 billion compared to $2 billion during the same month in 2020, according to S&P Global Panjiva. These expenses could soon mean higher prices for consumers, adding upward pressure to rise inflation. A nightmare scenario for Wall Street, which is already fearful that a spike in prices could force the Federal Reserve to hike interest rates sooner than expected. At the moment, a lot of these costs are within the supply chains, said Chris Rogers, a research analyst at S&P Global Panjiva. I think it's inevitable that it will be passed on to consumers. It's just going to take time, he added. An aerial view on February 22 of Yangshan port south of Shanghai one of the world's busiest container shipping port. Coronavirus wreaked havoc on global supply chains last year as lockdowns temporarily closed factories and disrupted the normal flow of trade. Economic activity slowed dramatically at the start of the pandemic, and the rapid rebound in trade volumes that followed caught companies off guard. A pickup in manufacturing and seemingly insatiable demand from housebound consumers for goods such as televisions, furniture, and exercise bikes has stretched suppliers and made it difficult for consumers to find the product they are like to buy. Manufacturers have also struggled to secure crucial components. Major car makers including Ford and Volkswagen has been forced to idle factories because of shortage of computer chips caused by a high demand for smartphones, gaming systems, and other tech gadgets. 1 year ago, global trade slowed to a crawl as the COVID-19 pandemic first hit China and then spread worldwide. Jean Saroka, executive director at the port of Los Angeles, said in a presentation this month. Today, we are in the seventh month of the historic import surge, driven by unprecedented demand by American consumers, he added. US seaborne imports were nearly 30% higher in February than the same month last year and 20% up on February 2019, according to S&P Global Fungiba. The import surge in the United States and elsewhere has led to a worldwide container shortage. Everything from cars and machinery to airfare to and other consumer staples were shipped in these metal boxes. The factories that make them are mostly in China, and many of them closed early in the pandemic, slowing down the rate at which new capacity was coming on stream, according to Rogers. Containers are in all the wrong places. China's exports recovered fairly quickly compared to the rest of the world. At the same time, major shipping lines had cancelled dozens of sailings to respond to the earlier lull in trade. The result was that empty containers piled up in all the wrong places and couldn't meet the sudden demand in Europe and North America for Asia-made goods. The Hapag-Lloyd, one of the world's largest container shipping lines, has deployed about 52 additional vessels just to move hundreds of thousands of empty containers to where they are needed most. In more normal times, there would be a few than 10. That's in reality about a ship a week. That's a that's doing nothing more than moving empty containers, CEO Rolf Haven Jansen told investors on a call last week. Ships set off the coast of Seal Beach, California on January 26, 2021. Influx of imports has compounded problems at choked up port, which are contending with the labor shortage due to the COVID-19 and a slowdown in operations caused by social distancing measures and quarantines. On Wednesday, there were 2 dozen vessels at anchor awaiting entry into either the port of Los Angeles or the neighboring port of Long Beach, according to Port of Los Angeles' spokesperson Philip Sanfield. At the Port of Los Angeles, we are actively working on an additional 17 container ships, Sanfield told CNN Business. Pre-pandemic, we would be working about 10 container ships with no container ships waiting to enter. The port processes the equivalent of nearly 800,000 20-foot containers last month, the busiest February in its 114-year history. Companies feel the strain. The companies from Under Armour and Hasbro to Dollar Tree, Urban Outfitter, and Crocs have all warned about the supply chain crunch recently, pointing to container shortages, port congestion, rising shipping costs, and logistics challenges. Costco said earlier this month that it was having trouble stocking imported cheeses because of the shortage of shipping containers and the bottlenecks. An analysis of 7,000 company earnings calls globally in January and February by S&P Global Panjiva found that more than a quarter mentioned freight, 37% mentioned logistics, and half discussed the supply chains. We know that the pressure freight pressure across the retail is here to stay, and we'll build that into our future plans. Mark Tritton, the CEO of Bed Bath and Beyond, told investors in January. Aston Chemicals, a UK company that supplies European manufacturers of personal care products, said its shipping costs were 6.5 times more expensive in January compared to November. We paid almost $14,000 for a container in January, said managing director Danny Lothland. That was for a shipment from Malaysia to the port of Felixstowe in England, which just 2 months earlier had cost $2,100. Peloton blames the U.S. West Coast port delays for causing longer than acceptable wait time for the delivery of each high-end exercise bike. The company told shareholders in February that it's investing over $100 million to expedite deliveries by air and sea over the next 6 months to improve delivery times. It's not the only firm resorting to airplanes to move goods that would ordinarily come by, both as companies scramble to keep up with customer demand. According to Piester Pelt of C.H. Robinson, a number of durable goods typically transported in shipping containers were being carried in planes, such as toys and games. Companies are choosing air flight because inventories are so low, he said. Air flight is more expensive than ocean flight even under normal circumstances, and therefore reserved for high valued goods. These costs are even higher at the moment because fewer flights carrying travelers means less available capacity to transport goods, a chunk of which are typically carried in the bellies of passenger planes. That will only add to the cost facing businesses and could trickle down to consumers being before long. Higher prices on the way. Companies have so far said very little about how they plan to respond to soaring flight rates, but there are only signs that import prices are rising. According to a Bureau of Label Statistics, U.S. import price experiences their largest monthly increase in January since March 2012. We anticipate strong demand from consumers to continue over the next couple of months and don't see meaningful change in capacity over that short time period, said Biesterfeld. The cost to move goods by air, ocean, truck, and train is now structurally up and on 2019, and the contract reflect that, he added. I do think the costs are really real and eventually will manifest themselves for consumers, he said. The extent to which these fees through to customer prices will vary from one product to the next. The goods that rely more heavily on imported components will likely cost more. At the same time, if the cost of imported goods rises significantly or these products become less readily available, that could give domestic producers more leeway to increase prices, said Joanna Konings, a senior economist at ING. Commerzbank analyst said in a note to clients on Friday that Suez snail up could cause the oil to become more expensive for consumers because of higher tanker rates at a cost of the incident. A satellite image shows the Ever Given and idling ships at the entrance of the Suez Canal. For Aston Chemicals, the cost increases were so severe that the only option was to pass them on to their customers. Businesses that make everyday products such as shampoos, moisturizers, and cosmetics. If those if those companies in turn decide to hike prices for their customers, in this case retailers, customers could start to feel the pinch soon, said Connings. Most prices along the supply chain have gone in one direction, and that's up, so it has to appear somewhere.